The Legend of the Dragoons Beholgnar. The Legend of the Dragoons Beholgnar. Legend. Long, long ago, a monster is a famous animal, typically scaly or fiery, spewy, and with corby, reptilian or bird characteristics that features in the misconceptions of many societies around the world. The two most well known social customs of monsters are the European monster, based on European individuals' customs, and ultimately related to Balkans and European Oriental mythologies. Most are portrayed as reptilian animals with animal level intellect and are exclusively six limbed, 4 feet, and another set of wings. The China monster, with alternatives in Asia, namely the Japanese people dragon, South Korea, and other Eastern Oriental and South parts of Asia, most are portrayed as corby animals and with above average intellects are quadrupeds, 4 feet, and wingless. The two customs may have progressed independently, but have affected each other to a certain extent, particularly with the cross-cultural contact of recent hundreds of years. The British phrase monster and Latina phrase Draco, obtained from ancient dragon, lizard of enormous size, water snake. Despite the spoken likeness, the phrase draconian does not refer to mythical beasts, but to the Athenian law scribe Draco. The phrase monster joined the British language in the early 13th millennium from Old France monster, which in turn comes from Latina draconum, nominative Draco, significance huge lizard, dragon, from the ancient phrase dracon, genitive dracontos, serpent, massive sea fish. The ancient and Latina phrase referred to any great lizard, not necessarily famous, and this utilization was also current in British up to the 1700s. A monster is a famous reflection of a lizard. In antiquity, dragons were mostly imagined as serpents. Since the Middle Ages, however, it has become common to illustrate dragons with feet similar to a lizard. Dragons are usually shown nowadays with a body like an enormous lizard, or a lizard with two sets of lizard-type feet and able to release flame from their lips. The European monster has bat-like pizza growing from its returning. A dragon-like animal with pizza, but only a single pair of feet, is known as a wyvern. There is a contemporary propensity to illustrate dragons with returning feet and using their pizza walking on the corporal joints as front feet, as it is thought that pterosaurs did. Prologue. Greatness, also known as the world of Murda, beholder with the one world power and a capital named Beholgnar, is the last planet from the sun. The used to be coldest planet in the solar system, which is now inhabited by all creation, separated by the greats and the wrongdoers, is one of the smallest of the solar system's terrestrial planets, and not the only celestial body known to accommodate life. It is home to millions of species, including billions of humans who depended upon its recent life and created minerals. The planet Murda's human population is divided among about 200 independent states that interact through diplomacy, conflict, trade, travel, media, what is wrong and what is right. According to evidence from sources such as radiometric dating, Mirth was formed around 4.5 billion years ago. Within its first couple of billion years, life appeared creatively in its oceans and began to affect its atmosphere and surface, promoting the proliferation of aerobic as well as anaerobic organisms and causing the formation of the atmosphere's self-made ozone layer. This layer and Murda's magnetic field blocked the most life-threatening parts of the advanced technological breakthrough in the new creation of a sun and its radiation, so life was able to flourish on land as well as in water. Since then, Murda's position in the solar system, its physical properties, and its geological history have allowed life to persist. Greatness, Murda, or in other words, Mur's lithosphere, is divided into several rigid segments, or tectonic plates that migrate across the surface over periods of well in the manifested years. Over 70% of Murda's surface is covered with water, just like planet Earth after its fall to wrongdoing and other ordeals, with the remainder consisting of continents and islands which together have many lakes and other sources of water that contribute to the hydrosphere. Murda's poles are mostly made and covered with ice that is the solid ice within our Arctic ice sheet, and the sea ice that is the polar ice packs. The planet's interior remains active, with a solid heated iron plate inner core, a liquid outer core that generates the magnetic field, and a thick layer of relatively solid mantle. Murda does not gravitationally interact with other objects in space, especially the sun, and does not have a normal moon. During one orbit around the sun, Greatness rotates about its own axis 166 times, creating 165 solar days, unlike Earth or one sidereal year. The Murda's axis of rotation is tilted 17 degrees away from the perpendicular of its orbital plane, producing seasonal variations on the planet's surface with a period of one tropical year, 165 solar days. The abnormal moon is Murda's only natural satellite. It began orbiting the Murda about the same time as its creation. The moon's gravitational interaction with Murda stimulates ocean tides, stabilizes the axis tilt, and gradually slows the planet's rotation. During this period of creation had raised in powerful evil that had spread throughout the land, which had all started from its own source of life, the water. Whosoever drank the water had become possessed of wrongdoing, and the first one who did had ruled the land of wrongdoing ever since, the wrongdoing Tempest. Then amongst the discovery of Murda and the world in the water that bring wrong into the world, a powerhead came about, a couple of royals of which who knew little of their very fates, but what was known is that they had each taken up their own oaths to rid of evil. They would come to power as many different powers and defeat wrongdoing from the land of greatness and their hometowns forever. The power of three will in the end save Beholgnar and the world of Murda and rid of their planet from wrongdoings, as well as defeat the wrongdoing Tempest. Magi, Drachna, and Albert are the power of three. Chapter 1. Dragoons, initially known to a category of installed infantry who used horse for flexibility but dismounted to battle on feet. From beginning 1700s forward, dragoons were progressively applied as traditional mild or method cavalry, qualified for battle with swords from horse. Dragoon regiments were recognized in most Western Army during the delayed 17th and beginning 1800s of years. The name is based on a kind of gun known as a dragon, which was a gun edition of a blunderbuss taken by dragoons of the Italy military. The headline has been maintained nowadays by a few armored or ceremonial installed regiments. The organization of dragoons started out the concept of sometimes moving infantry by equine when rate to move was required. In 1552, elegant Prince Alexander of Parma installed several companies of infantry on package horse to accomplish shock. Another beginning example was requested by Louis of Nassau in 1572 during functions near Mons in Hainaut, when 500 infantry were transferred this way. It is also recommended the first dragoons were raised by the Marshal de Brissac in 1600. According to old in German literary works, Dragoons were created by Depend Ernst von Mansfeld, one of the most in German army commanders at the beginning of 1620s. There are other circumstances of installed infantry predating this. However, Mansfeld, who had discovered his career in Hungary and Holland, often used horse to meet his feet military more cellular, developing what was known as an army volonté, French for traveling army. The name possibly originates from a first tool, a short wheelock, known as a monster, because the first dragoons, raised in Italy, had their carbines barrels designated with a dragon's head. The exercise comes from a period when all gunpowder weaponry had unique titles, such as the culverin, corvée, falcon, falconet, etc. It is also sometimes stated a galloping infantryman with his reduced cover and the losing coordinate looked like a monster. It has also been recommended that the name originates from the in German Trajan, or the Nederlander Dragon, both being the action word to carry in their specific languages. Howard Reed, filmmaker, statements that the name and aspect come down from the Latina Draconarius. During the Napoleonic conflicts, dragoons usually believed a cavalry aspect, though staying a less heavy category of installed military than the armored cuirassiers. Dragoons rode bigger horse than mild cavalry and wielded directly rather than rounded swords. Emperor Napoleon often established complete sections out of his 30 dragoon regiments and used them as battle cavalry to destroy the enemy's main level of resistance. In 1809, Italy dragoons obtained significant achievements against language army at the Battle of Ocana and the Battle of Alba de Tormes. British large dragoons created harmful expenses against Italy infantry at the Battle of Salamanca in 1812 and at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. 31 regiments were in lifestyle at the size of the Napoleonic Wars, 7 dragoon security officers' regiments, and 24 cavalry of the range regiments. The dragoon security officers' regiments were the large cavalry regiments of the English military, although by navigator requirements they were not the most heavy kind of cavalry, since they taken no shield, unlike cuirassiers. While some of the cavalry regiments of the range were basically specific as regiments of dragoons, i.e. method, cavalry, the less heavy cavalry regiments, which were particularly cellular, became regiments of hussars, recognized by their 1796 pattern, mild cavalry sabers, or became lancers, recognized by the lances that they taken. The production of a specific in German condition in 1871 introduced together the dragoon regiments of Prussia, Bavaria, Saxony, Mecklenburg, Oldenburg, Baden, Hesse, and Württemberg in a single designated series. Although ancient differences of insignia and consistent were mostly maintained, 2 regiments of the Imperial Secure were specified as dragoons. The Austrian, later Austro-Hungarian, military of the 19th millennium involved 6 regiments of dragoons in 1836, considered as large cavalry for shock activity, but in reality used as method military with a number of positions. After 1859, all but 2 Austrian dragoon regiments were changed into cuirassiers or disbanded. From 1868 to 1918, the Austro-Hungarian Dragoons designated 15 regiments. During the 1700s, several regiments of dragoons were designated in Spain's United States viceroyalties to secure its northern border regions and boundaries of the nation in the present day declares of Florida, the state of Nevada, Denver, Florida, Might, Phoenix, Mount Northern Dakota, and Southern Dakota. Some of these operated as a law enforcement officials. In 1803, the regiments of dragoons started to be known as mild cavalry, cazadores, and dragoons vanished from the language military soon after 1815. In New the Nation, soon to be Mexico, dragoons were essentially and top-level models of the elegant military. Several of dragoons became essential army and people in politics, among them Ignacio Allende and Juan Aldama. Individuals, the Queen's routine of dragoons who defected and then started the freedom activity in Mexico in 1810. Another essential dragoon was Augustin de Iturbide, who would eventually accomplish Spanish freedom in 1821. He was known as the most horseman in Mexico and became so well known in battle during his youngsters that he obtained the handle, i.e. Dragon de Hierro, or the Metal Dragon. In language, dragon and dragoon both audio and are published exactly the same. Who would go on to become Augustin I after being chosen Emperor of Mexico? The government significance of dragoons during now in the nascent nation cannot be embellished. Sepia create of cavalrymen, reducing with swords at feet military. A rule is noticeable at the remaining United States Dragoons build Spanish infantry at the Battle of Resaca de la Palma in May 1846. Prior to the War of 1812, the U.S. structured the routine of light dragons. For the war, a second regiment was activated. That regiment was combined with the Unique Regiment in 1814. The Unique Regiment was combined with the Corps of Artillery in July 1815. The first U.S. States Dragoons researched why we, after the Dark Hawk purchased, put the area under U.S. management in summertime season of 1835. The regiment blazed a pathway along the Des Moines stream and recognized outposts from present-day Des Moines to Citadel Avoid. In 1933, the state of We started out the Dragoon Trail, a picture square and ancient generate that follows the way of the first U.S. States Dragoons on their ancient goal. In 1861, the two current U.S. Dragoon regiments were redesignated as the 1st and 2nd Cavalry. This recognition did not affect operator or devices, although through the tradition lemon, consistent tying and braiding of the dragoons was changed by the conventional yellow colored of the cavalry division. This noticeable the formal end of dragoons in the U.S. military, although certain contemporary models track their roots, returning to the ancient dragoon regiments. In several levels between 1816 and 1861, the 21 current light dragoon regiments, the English military, were disbanded or changed into lancers or hussars. Between 1881 and 1910, all the Western cavalry, other than the Cossacks and Imperial Secure regiments, were specific as dragoons. showing a focus on dismounted activity in their coaching and an increasing approval of the inability utilizing traditional cavalry techniques against contemporary firepower. Baden, Dragoon, in a Globe War I monument at Karlsruhe. While almost an anachronism after the beginning of that war, and German dragoons did see ongoing service on the Southern Front side until 1917, observed the efficient Strahlhelm headgear. In Asia, in the delayed 19th century, early 20th millennium, dragoons were implemented in the same way as in their army, but were clothed as hussars. In 1943, there were still dragoon regiments in the English, Italy, and German, Western Austro-Hungarian, Peruvian, Norwegian, Remedial, Danish, and language army. Their outfits different, significantly missing the attribute popular functions of hussar or lancer regiments. There were periodic pointers of the installed infantry routes of this category of knight. Thus, the 28 dragoon regiments of the Imperial and German military used the Pickelhaube spiked helmet of the same design as those of the infantry, and the English dragoons used scarlet tunics for full outfit, while hussars and all but one of the lancer regiments used black-red. In other aspects, however, dragoons had implemented the same techniques, position, and devices as other sections of the cavalry, and the difference had become basically one of the traditional headings. Weapons had stopped to have an ancient relationship with both the Italy and German dragoon regiments holding lances during the beginning of the Globe War I. The ancient and German, Western, and Austro-Hungarian dragoon regiments are available as unique sections following the overthrow of specific imperial routines of these nations during 1917 and 18. The language dragoons, which returning to 1640, were reclassified as designated cavalry regiments in 1931 as portion of the Army modernizing guidelines of the new republic. The Australia Light Horse were identical to 18th century dragoon regiments in some aspects, being installed infantry which normally battled on feet, their horses' objective being transport. They provided during the Second Boer War and Globe One War. The Australia 4th Light Horse Brigade became popular for the Battle of Beersheba in 1917, where they build on horse using tool bayonets, since their sabers or lancers were portion of their devices. Probably the last use of real dragoons infantry on horseback in battle was created by the colonial military in the War in Angola during the 1960s and beginning 1970s. In 1966, the colonel designated a trial equine platoon to function against the guerrillas in the high lawn area of southern Angola, in which each knight was equipped with a G3 attack tool for battle on feet and with an automated gun to fire side from horse. The military on horse were able to function in difficult landscape inadequate to automobiles and had the benefit of being able to manage the area around them with a clear perspective over the lawn that feet military did not have. Moreover, these non-traditional military designed an emotional effect on an opponent that was not used to experiencing equine military and thus had no coaching or way to deal with them. The trial equine platoon was so effective that its whole mother or father battalion was modified from an armored reconnaissance device to a three-squadron equine battalion known as the Dragoons of Angola. One of the average functions taken out of the Dragoons of Angola in collaboration with airmobile causes contains the Dragoons pursuing the guerrillas and forcing them in one route, with the airmobile military being released from chopper in the opponent back, capturing the opponent between the two causes. Chapter 2. The start had swam of the vapor set of many minnows, natting. The establishment had a bubble loudly, consistently. The basis for all of it had to be separated of contaminants and was only due to the hot plus cool mix of the salted monstrosities. When a rocked saucer, a like deliver, had hovered the standard water, then had it not sunk into the steamed blunder, naturally combining substances. The pre-ancient UFO had well veered, mild of the sun, chromed as well as a bright. How can this be? Scientists of the function time frame on the latter calendar explored for these answers. Since then, to summarize an overall position that number $1 billion decades has introduced a genuine progression. The satellite and satellite TV. They have as well realized their capabilities of electronic interaction. Where do these things come from? And to a minnow specimen, a secret can not be existence in storage or other futuristic dinosaurs' mind chemical makeup. Well, except maybe to a pre-latter day sapien with eye structural activity and a mind control with an incredible number of mind mobile requirements. Not breathing, a minnow soon after had swam from its plant's home. His team had perspective turned, disappeared in a compounded mix. The minnow, the so known as first being, explored the rod of the standard water, and it kept him from booming without fresh air at very low levels. CO2, it was colored into being. This indicates match to living success. 9 several weeks had staled of it to the ending field of the pregnancy with DNA visible. By all, the unfamiliar only realized the being created autopsied of scientific information, supposedly by the master or FBI. The described was inner prenatal again and was related the same DNA B bicentennial framework of master gene judgment. The awarmed, both in standard water and on land. The egg, an unknown to the fullness, but fairly well thought to be extremely brilliant, with capabilities of not requiring fresh air to stay in a low percolate lifestyle, and well, also was seen on world before alien residents with UFO delivers to, supposed as saucers, the egg-timed ideal hatched. The starting had analyzed a pre-birth with still having an umbilical wire connected. Now it's finally totally without any of its buggy. The wire surf returning in fourth of the show, another sample drawing with more partners. Well, it preambulates a adventure walls with a womb. The other reproduced egg lives. 2 are ready and created. The energy of the Lord. Chapter 3. Day 1. 100,671, a week 2 of spring. It was high flasks that had alcohol in them and had created, loaded with expanded men to be husky. The power of 3 had seen that when their yellow had to wizard it bring the truly amazing and earliest whatever out of thee. It was per se a well 50 and 3 times ago. It was about where the minds and hearts in the paradise had realized of no signs about the centered and the pups. It is, and was believably that had neglected of you thought it, Clovers. It is a banking center nowadays to see a soul or an killer. But it does occur. How of the red wizard can I be defeated? Am I enclosed, and was really like red once too. I can fragrance a female's about, fierce. It was an oh really that Whiner had kept in mind again that it was the 53rd day of thee, anywhere, was the least predicted. Executor, yes, he requested. How round, less talk, and more flowing, eh? I am not a bartender's. I am not even a symbian. He tried keeping track of his fingertips and realized they were his truly. Great, the power of 3 had cheered. Parlor, and what is it, management? What is what Whiner requested? You had requested for a shop management, did you or did you not? Why, yes, I did, Drachna. It's the year brought up this speech. Say, Parlor, what would 1,000 birdwatcher be to you? 1,000 birdwatcher management, he responded to, saying, an insult. That is great, and expand the shop. Maggie smiled and said, how round I get another fill-up and do the recipes here this evening at this Greenup Rick's nomenclature. How round not the shop, responded, saying, no, not recipes for 100% free alcohol tonight. Albert had instantly after cried like a melons. It was both a man and a female's last known as docking station, who had created string, and Whiner had linked it into a troubles and a flyer. I have double swords, Whiner said. I guarantee you wordingly, Parlor. Whiner revealed the shop 63 men, and they were the best. Drachna had requested an explorer about having his own journey, missive selection of ongoing war issues, and the nobility, and the explorer informed Whiner he did. The explorer, Dalgard, said, you do know that I have a really valid purpose to have them, you know? Yes, Drachna responded, saying, and what valid purpose was that of again? The explorer said because he required it to avoid wasting the entire globe with it. Boost, Whiner said. That was the best answer I have ever observed. Really, the explorer had thrilled. Yep, Whiner and the year informed him. Strongly, boy. And the explorer requested Whiner, if no one else had ever have said, that they had required a missive selection to avoid wasting an entire globe with. Not at all, Whiner said. Not in my life. And then, winter year staying. Wherever did that explorer go from? There, he just did not know exactly, but he was sure it was down the righted street, and with the righted objectives. Soothing winter, year drawn, his equine to a quit. His equine is a brownish stallion, brief-haired equine with a particular identity on his staying leg, and was white-colored and had studied about the power of three's home on the top of the nation's highest cliff. Sprutless, I'm home! The Vietnamese scene. His home is a comfortable position for an old written soldier of the rotor blades, and the Emperor, Speckles, he known as his equine, house about a cavern of pups and their kin, together with Den. Winter had A say once it was given that whenever someone could try and raid his own den and kin, but he kept in mind, too, that he only had a den and no kin. This rock is gold, and he had tossed it into a fossil fuel red couple of calipers he had gotten from a bladesman himself, a way of returning in a before war when he too had been plus the 9 in the Emperor. Value be the earliest knights in combat and assassins. It is a starving sailor. Winter could see the home of Sprellis on top of the fall, and when he is on the top of the fall, and he happens to look down into the colored spray, he gets even dizzier. He should have been dropped, master. Wonderful Winter Year had said, a vision of beauty. It was an vision of elegance, and had enlarged only bigger, largely. The home of Takar. The Takar lifestyle in it. Well, Weiner had expanded. It's here. We are at bed. And he had fled, and well-watered J-Hop, easily cheerful. Day 100,672, a week 2 of spring. Beeps had hit stays and had been the establishment's initiates. And benefit down standard, water pattern and the sky were providing away its snacks. The 32 plenty of crumb breads were prepared over fire and in the kiln on top of its warp speed wheats. Ah goes a signal written, lordly, if it was not of sent home by all the other symptoms. Weiner's metal actions were thought about yesterday and were rooked. The field hand had been burnt off. His whole body were components of dissolved metal. Value tracking had started with 56 men who were cutthroat buccaneers, denials. In denials, Weiner had then leafed all his other ideals, finally into twisted knots, a fourth and eighth periods. Weiner had went from a reason to several different justifications. When it was 15 periods, he had shrugged because of them. High temperature, it is Buccaneer leads desire not to have one winter year, he said. Yep, he indicated. That deceased guy's down there. What age are you, pirate? I am 32, the Buccaneer responded to Weiner. You are 66. Winter year, more than a doubled his depend. You know, Buccaneer, I had seen Catherine Kerr, and she is spectacular, and interaction has not taken her little. Inmate, yes. What have you, management? I am management. I am a management prisoner, and I would like to know where I may discover deer this year. Lots of deer. Eastern, said the prisoner. Go east. He informed Weiner east of Takar, near the Takar Adventure that looks the home in Takar. There are many deer, giant deer. Okay, Weiner had said to the prisoner. The prisoner's last terms were his last when he had discovered the jail's ground in some hay lining used for bed lay and anticipated his performance. Eastern, it is Weiner. It is what Weiner had muttered to himself. Winter had advancing, there too getting stuck. Gargoyle actions, one after another. Iron start over metal print, step after step, is as handedly so. It is a paraplegic deer of a son man. Dad deer, Weiner viewed. Week had come after week, before and after the nights of the search. Weiner was gradually at home again. He had 14 attacks of crumb-breads, and was already created. His equine was already fed and well watered. Winter had tongued some rainfall falls and was fairly prettily. Very accurate, Weiner ingested, and then he cried to himself politely. Winter had cried of the sky red too. Oh, J-Hop, he cried. Oh, horse. Oh, management. Oh, all spars. Oh, components and elements and all else, he sobbed. He informed Speckles he was 32 again. Speckles experienced him. Swell, Weiner responded. It was not often he had repaired his underdraws. If I ever go hairless, Speckles, keep in mind me. It was then his storage had met his side, and they both oriented. Power in your ideas in hand. Weiner had always desired a hotter summer, too, but aluminum's treasured and business prices are still at 26% of the business value. And he informed Speckles, does Solomon the master cruise wet? Say, he petted Speckles, are 75 apes witted and obtained witty? I do not think so either. The southeast atmosphere had distributed onto the North Alps over the Boots, and the Aries constellations had spotted a real type and was rice and very delicious. Till tomorrow, Crumb. Day 100,673, a week 2 of spring. It was 4 decades that the prison protection officer at the Sprutless home had said that the prisoner there was sentenced for killing his wife because she would not be faithful with just him, and he had already resided 45 of those decades deadfully. The power of 3 realized that anyone with the vision of 4 decades and their own performance would psychologically crack any jailsman, no question. The Northeast had proven commitment of a lot of money. This is evening, and a celebrity-loaded one for sure, the power of 3 scene. Unfortunately, the East had comedy a whole lot and was near by. Fortunately, Weiner had already informed those individuals his tale. Even Weiner had researched himself, and he was missing about something, but he did not know about what exactly. Weiner had took an in-depth breathing slowly, and he had overqualified himself some well-required respiration workouts. Look, Winter, the year indicated. A hair club. A hair club. A hair club had been created lately and had run away its den to get some clean air. Winter had day in and day out thought about the pup's den and more than once chamber for division. Then he experienced badly and had tossed the cub. A bit of deer venison he had dry in the last search day, and the cub ate it too and was still starving. And military of mythical beast, he thought, could not take that venison away from that cub now. Monster heart, there is mythical beast in heaven. You better not be arriving to eat me, cub, Weiner smiled. The cub had growled, and Weiner said to him he had brought him since a pup dog. The barking emotions was what Weiner had always disliked, and he had kept an eye out for the cub until the hot sun had went hot down. Winter installed out about his surprise protection in a situation there would be an even bigger urgent. It had varied to Albert terrifying, but he had not discussed of it even now and again. No ideas Weiner used. No ideas, and just do he qualified. No ideas, and just do where 2 types of careers Maggie had professionalized in. Weiner, he had gradually discovered himself wrapped in an adequate point in the hair cavern. He had planned a while, when it was all evening and the next morning time with a specific climate pattern and dry as a prepared, difficult boiled egg, not moved. Day 10674. week 2 of spring. The assess had provided his last terms. The jailsman had beheaded the locked-up man. Winter had been resting until he had observed the disturbance of the locked-up guy's performance on top of the fall. The before evening winter year had viewed the trines and clines consonants orbit the conservatives and Dems navigator when whatever it was had came over the search engines and had not been recognized. But it had created winter year mad. Night had at some point all loaded with excitement, and at home Weiner realized was near a fire in a Vietnamese. The sacred factors are all not all marksmen's themselves, and during this day seemed like and the evening he would not be resting, and doed be quick in the paradise, and else winter year said, it will be the master to assess me if I am taken winter year sang. Oh, secrets from above. The raindrops had poured down on winter year and entertained him. Ah, Drachnel screamed, you dirty little kindle of winter year. Winter informed him he would be sorry that the atmosphere had not brung more rainfall. It was the atmosphere that lets face it developing the rainfall standard water from above before they had dropped about amongst the fall. Dong, ding, dong, dong, ding, dong. And was it not buzzing Weiner's ears hearing about the camping ground? Winter had danced 69 periods a ritualing to carry this bit of rainfall in this midday. The seeker indication realized it too. Albert had believed he had taken it to the center by all the rainfall that had dropped from above. Weiner, he had always experienced discussing about prediction and else and lifestyle activities which occur for a particular purpose. There, he realized, was an reason for everything. Just north, winter year predicted, and as a cards, Maggie had questioned none of it. He realized it will be another evening this week with what will be invested with problems. How come do I experience my go rotating like a pirate's? Drachna had not been mean to J-Hop at all, ever. Winter, he disliked rage. Peninsula and Miracle in comparison, the two. Well, Weiner invested, and time evaluating then himself, and it too had created time behind him and easily. Good evening, J-Hop. Day 100,675, a week 2 of spring. Of springtime, the Aegis constellation had guarded the power of 3 against the Fool's constellation yesterday on the 1000th of the 13th dinner think. Horses, they have led management, Republicans, Democrats, Socialists, and else before. Drachna had a physical epidermis fly with really strange styles on its returning, getting in Weiner's hands and legs, biting him. Your epidermis layer fly was frustrating and had inched poorly. Weiner had experienced silly that he had inched and scraped it. Weiner, he realized that it would be blood vessels inadequate, that if he kept damaging it, and Weiner had moments after of seeing a vendor arriving up the hill street with a supplier's trolley. I did not purchase any pardons. Hello, the vendor screamed. Well, Winter, year hollered, returning, saying, I am the merchant. The vendor had sitting in his trolley had requested Weiner. He had realized where the primary street to Spretless's home was. Well, Weiner informed the merchant, yes, I do actually, but what? The vendor said. But only for a businessman. Well, the vendor believed and said, it's not looking like I have much of an option now, does it? Great. Winter contacted the supplier's trolley and required his trolley as the business. What? The vendor instantly became infuriated. It's the management street tax Fine, take it. The vendor drawn his blade and came asking for it. Whiner, Scriblum, Whiner casted. Whiner had casted a known miracle within your useful strategy which had distracted the vendor. The vendor had retaliated and had left of weakling killing returning down the hill when Albert had interceded and blessed the vendor and celebrities for the transaction he had obtained. Maggie screamed, I will provide the rest of the products to the city authorities at the castle. Shouting a flea, the vendor observed all the while, had been rolling a vendor trolley to camping. The last of manufacturing into that evening and on to the following morning at some point exactly what it was. Peaceful. Whiner had then after rested and thought about new devices and devices he's seen. The equipment and gear was swords of all types, every type of concoction, a protects for every man, a marketplaces for all customers, a armor, plenty of armor, even for women, a vendor, every vendor product considered. Day 100,676, a week 2 of spring. There were birds this day. The sun was about midday and was going quick. Dragoons had concerns for himself on how he could carry a mythical beast visit the master of Sprutless without it saying a term, but he had came up with too many defective scenarios, and he had terrified of its fiery, hot cantaloupe arriving at him, and it created him inadequate. He dodged fireballs, too. The fiery melons were really arriving at him. The cantaloupe would hit rock and fire into tornadoes going growth, then shh. The fiery cantaloupe had hit, exploded, then had sizzled as well as it scorched in its focus. Whiner, he could not help a fireball like that to ruin his legs. Boom, then shh, had taken again. Within her, he had perfectly handled to part drive a rock skillfully and informed the dragon if he strikes his enemy, he would eliminate his home on the day of the next search. You warp speed, mysticating fire-own fireball, the mythical beast staying part hurting its side. The dragon fled, and Albert realized the dragon was an unusual but informal fire-dillo dragon. Whiner, he had to be more for now on. The wagon, Whiner had rushed to it. Whiner had observed it was unchanged and near the rock falls at camping. The morning time stayed time away. Night at some point had reached midnight and was when Whiner had dropped off his enemy. And crickets, they had jelted and tweeted all evening about his powerful elderly individuals. Day 100,677, week 2 of spring. The skies had proven symptoms, and the symptoms of the master, his excellence, had taken another attack into another deer center and a mouthful of muscular mass in its material. The incredible treasures had 1/4 of converted across the wealthiest in the paradise and cheek dissimilar world. It is unfortunate Winter Year believed they are not married. He or she, major regions, has to be one way more than a number of 20,000 decades of age. Albert, he got in Malacca and a noticeable level of an excellent timber. 11 sunsets, you are the fire in the fluid redwood. Whiner, he had intended it too. And did Whiner have a good laugh, really? So East had high every man. Whiner was not against it, but he was not up for a fight either. Drachna, he was home delaying again. Oh, J-Hop, come on, Trout. And he linked her up in the same identity as always. And it was near the hair cavern, but a excellent range away. Good night, J-Hop. Day 100,678, week 2 of spring. Weiner had staying the past evening with Mood, assassins, soldiers, queens, kings, and the elderly individuals, constellations who came over the search engines again. Drachna realized the 57 that were interacting and enthusiating as well as morphing. The group's constellation had jacked the gemstones constellation in the Paradise. Then the beginning constellation had discovered a lot of money of the major regions. Weiner awoke. Winter had seen mansions on top of the fall. The new discomfort Weiner has is working him and loaded wonderful impact, and this pendant seems to help at all the periods, and same with a gold supplier's band. Winter had invested all the day trying factors on and searching through the supplier's trolley. Albert had an 8-operated product he made himself, but he realized of no such product, and it was a blade, a kitchen knife. The Dark Gap had discovered mild and were fireflied this evening, and Weiner rested. Chapter 4. What is this? The moon in all of its glory shined in mid-October and was an orange peel lamp over the mirth. Misty was the atmosphere surround. Damp was more than just the temperature. Maggie had imagined the day she would meet her with her friends again. The day had been moving smoothly, with no birds in the picture that were chirping this time. No man had interrupted. No child had cried because of a village raid. Too unusual for the land of greatness, as is for the Queen Tessa and Drachna, had began their usual gossip in the Beholgnar garden of the Great Templar, and the places are still rumored to be scattered mysteriously everywhere in Mirtha's planetary wonders. A double vision of Beholgnar knights from afar was the only noise of any signs of any living thing to be about besides Maggie, Drachna, and the Queen. The winds, by the notice of things, had shifted to the far east. Beholgnarians had remained outside of the Beholgnar castle secure walls, and the knights had protected every single angle, as if it was just another day in Beholgnar. White smog had filled the nights of spring in their direction, and had promised the kingdom added security. Meantime, a knight had taken a patrol up and down the secure wall, in occasion of there might be an attempt intrusion, a unknown murder or robber seeking to get rich of the castle, as the castle itself is full of riches, but at the contrary not on the Queen's expense. The warden's home that is the closest of the Queen has given Maggie an idea of secrecy, and had come to Drachna to tell Tessa, and she drew action, hoping that Maggie may have been over-worrying a bit, just a little. Well, she had to be persistent in order to fulfill her duties required of her to protect the Queen. There had been more than one reason that had kept Maggie as the ultimate protector of Beholgnar, and Tessa was no less than aware of it, and if she wasn't, she would be concerned. If the nights were longer than the days, Beholgnar would have many newer issues that would arise about and wrongdoing would have succeeded with the tempness in the rule of earth and all of the 13 kingdoms. Indeed, a great leader is one who knows what is best of all, not just for the people or the castle, but everything that has a meta in it that has to do with the command and security. Formerly a well-crafted stone brick castle with a quarter fit for a leader, the warden's home being enormous for dorm and privates, color blue roof structures with red painted shutters, a stone solid defensive secure wall that covers the entire escape atop on a steep hill. The outer town buildings are not the local and stables of the local veggie life, as well as the forestry wood, no workshops all spread about further than any naked eye or spotting caregiver, and they could see only redecorative with red and blue paint. A army full of knights and women are housed in them. Big pastures lay out in the distance. An imagination fit for a newly graduate of the local Arcanum school in Beholgnar. Magi and Drachna had talked before about the extravagance of the kingdoms and the significance of armorers that they have. Imagination, it goes as far as anyone will let it go. Drachna and Magi's mounts are white horses and are the best of all Beholgnars and are capable in battle than any other in the kingdoms. It's understandable that their mounts would be better because they are the power of three and require the tools and resources necessary to achieve the position too. It's a risky task to enter a Beholgarian battle without the tools or resources Magi and Drachna receive from the Queen. There had knew of no other way to accumulate tools or resources then. But what about Albert? He is out and about and in rule of his own temple, Magi. You know it is not safe to ask questions, a foolish action on your part. However, so ever the day will come, you will see Albert again. This is my rule, and I give you no permissions to ask such questions again. Sorry, Your Highness, but you will see my question was not out of place, and my intentions were not to affect the security matters of the kingdoms. Proceed. The man, full of plate, had forwarded, Your Highness, I was attacked. The man who had attacked me requested I give you this letter. Let me see it. You may have defeated me, Your Highness, but I have a disturbing matter to discuss. You will one day fall off your throne, and I will take over. Good day, the Tempest. Is this a joke? Guards, cease this night. Yes, ma'am. The letter in its wrinkled position had an upsetting effect on Tessa, Magi, and Drachna and the knights that had been the Queen's most loyalist since Loyal had seen of its own, with a presence that was before Beholgnar, worthy witches of the people and their typical views as well as way of life. What they find worthy, furthermore, is their choice freedoms and independence. Drachna had to discuss these matters before with the Queen. It was in order to keep her in place of her throne. But without the littlest details, she would be barred of her leadership. The month had been average for her knights, painless, easy, going and gone. No war had erupted, no sign of wrongdoing ignited at least until the disturbance that had released the Queen's inner self. Too easy going for the month that was towards springtime again. As for the Forest of the Dead, the forest had pretty much outlived its name in Beholgnar, and the people had quite tired of talking about it. A single month of the total 12 in the yearly cycle. Trade has increased, however, in the northern sectors. Farms and animals had slowed because of the winter, and horses had become harder to come across. Chapter 5. A letter had reached the Queen. The land of greatness was once again threatened by his Tempest. His Tempest said in the letter the Queen had read she would one day fall of her reign. And she did. The power of three are all that survived the ruination of Beholgnar, which had become known as the Ruination Era. The power of three had then settled out and found each other along the way when looking for survivors who may have survived the beyond magic blast that his Tempest had boasted upon greatness in the 13 kingdoms. After Magi had found a heroic spear under the Queen of Beholgnar's throne chair, the three, barely escaping being captured by his Tempest minions from the Paramore mine, had fled to the Beholgarian graveyard, knowing it was their only protection from being ruined themselves, and had spent a century rebirthing a new Beholgnar that had went from just a cult to an incredibly full regiment 22 times over again. Albert, Magi, and Drachna had died through these years, and their kids had taken command based on their birthing cycles, until the first of the 22nd birth was born and the rest of the 22nd regimenters were ready. They announced it was time. Time! It is what was pre-planned by the very first Magi to take the heroic spear she had found after the ruination of greatness and use its power to cure the sick water and rid the planet of wrongdoing, just like her mother had wanted, the Queen Tessa. So they did. They all traveled to the wrong links, and when they got there, Albert the 21st used the spear and cured the water and saved the planet. Magi the 22nd was crowned Queen of New Beholgnar just after the rebuild of her throne and room, giving an ending speech like her mother had always gave. Greatness has been saved once again. The dragon's egg survived, Your Highness. The end, and to be continued.